Hello and welcome back to another episode of the On the Sideline podcast. And I am joined by someone who was a very good sport about me drunk tweeting him talking smack about the Lightning winning a Stanley Cup. Kyle, how are you doing?
I'm good. Yeah, I know what it's like to win a few championships in my day. So you got to give credit, be a classy loser every now and then.
Yes. I know it all too well. I had an absolute blast. Probably too much fun, but that's fine. We have a fun show for you today. As always, we are going to be previewing every game that's going to be coming up Sunday. So, all 16 games. Should be a fun week. Last week, we did not do well. Last week, we had a bad week altogether. We ended up going 8-8. Very not great. You had 7 misses overall. I have 6 misses overall now. So I am now, for the first time this season, in first place. I've taken the lead, meaning that you will be picking a game for me first. And let's just get into it. Let's go ahead and why don't you give me a game?
Yeah, it wasn't a good week, but I did feel like that was one of the more competitive slates of the season. And I feel like that there is some bounce back potential here. I didn't really prepare for this on one regard because we didn't talk about it, so I guess we could talk about it now while everyone's listening. Are we picking the Steelers and Titans game?
That's a good point because there's the Okay, how about this? Maybe this is a So, if I understand correctly, that's the only game. Yeah, we should have planned this out beforehand. How's it going, everyone in the chat? Everyone, but let's do. So that's the only game that might not be played, right? Every other game.
Yeah, but there's a potential they play it Tuesday.
Gotcha. Well,
I say we pick it, and then if it goes on later in the schedule, then we'll just go against that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it makes sense. We'll do this, and no matter what, it might end up being later on in the year, but we'll pick. Sure. This will be a game, sure.
Yes. So that's my number one pick. That's why. So I'm gonna give you the Steelers and the Titans for the first pick.
Yeah. No, this is a good one. That's I think that these are two really good teams. I do feel like I've been a bit underwhelmed by the Steelers defense to some degree, especially their secondary. It hasn't looked as dominant as it had looked in previous years. So I do think that I'm going to go with the Tennessee Titans on this one. I think that they can run their play action. What should be interesting though will be the Titans running game versus the Steelers run stopping, because the Steelers have been so good at stopping the run. So that should be a big matchup. But I actually think that Tennessee can still have success, even if they don't have success running the football. Just the fact that they run the football enough even if they don't have success, should be fine. So I am going to go with Tennessee right here.
I think that's a fair pick. I think I would have leaned Steelers because I tried to look into some of this because I was trying to get a gauge on this AFC South because I felt like I had no idea what I was going with here. Here's where I'm concerned with the Titans. They gave up 464 yards to the Vikings last week, who couldn't get anything going against the Colts. And the week before that, they gave almost 500 yards to the Jacksonville Jaguars. So at this point, am I really convinced that this defense is going to be that good? I mean, I guess the way I would put it is that this team for the last, it seems like since Jeff Fisher was there, has been 9-7 virtually every year. But I know it's only been like the past 3 years. So the past 3 years, they've been like 9-7.
4 years. 4 years in a row.
4 years, excuse me. 4 years of 9-7. So why am I convinced that this year they're going to be any better than that?
Oh, well, I mean, going on that point, I mean, I think the reason is because they did a lot better at the end of last season when Tannehill was in, and they were 9-7 with Mariota getting significant playing time in all those years.
Yeah, but at the same time, they're also Derrick Henry isn't putting up his real stats from the second half of last year, and the defense doesn't look nearly as good as it did at the end of the year last year. So why should I be convinced? I would probably lean Steelers here because of that. But
Mhm.
I do think there's going to be a good matchup. I think these are two gritty teams. Yeah, I mean, I think Pittsburgh's better. I'm kind of with you that the defense hasn't blown me away, but at the
Mhm.
same time, I still think that they're going to get a lot better throughout the year than I think Tennessee is.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. They played Houston, and that's a game I think many of us thought they should win. Houston looked good, almost won that game. Denver, without Drew Lock, still played them very tough. So I think Pittsburgh. I think this is a big win for both. This is kind of the winner is legit of this game. I feel like.
Yeah, I definitely do. I mean, I broke it down a little bit. I feel like that there's you know, if you break the AFC into tiers, I think I talked about this last Sunday too. I feel like the first tier is still Kansas City and Baltimore. Although based off of Monday night, you probably feel that there's still a pretty big discrepancy between Kansas City and in Baltimore in that first tier. And then in the second tier, I probably have Pittsburgh, Buffalo, New England, Tennessee. I feel like those are the next people up, and you could probably talk me into the Colts being in that grouping too. So that's five teams that I feel like are the next five teams up to that. If something weird happens, like heaven forbid, Mahomes or Lamar gets hurt, those are one of the next five teams up that I think could compete for a Super Bowl. But I still feel like they're clearly a tier below those two teams.
Yeah, I feel like there's another team that I think is in there. I can't remember. No, I can't remember who they are though, so maybe not. But yeah, no, I think that's fair. I'll give you my pick now. I'm gonna give you the game we've all been waiting for. The one we circled on the schedule. One of the best
This was
games.
number two for me too.
Yes. Denver Broncos going to the Jets. What a battle this can be. Finally, the Darnold versus who's going to be playing quarterback for the Broncos again? This is going to be a wild one. Who do you have? I honestly, just unrelated, I'm going to have a blast watching this game. I love these types of games. I think it's going to be fantastic. But who do you have? The Jets are 1.5 point favorites. Who do you have winning this one?
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, you better put some respect on Brett Rippon's name.
Yes.
Spokane, Washington legend Brett Rippon coming in at quarterback starting this game. So I was thinking about this. This is probably the only game of the season that the Jets are not going to be one of our three easiest picks. And this is probably the only game all season they're going to be favored until Adam Gase is fired and something changes. I'm going with the Broncos. Even with the injuries, I'm picking the Broncos. I still think that there's enough talent. Like, I still think Noah Fant's probably better than anybody else in this game. And I still think that there's good players on the Broncos. They're just way too banged up. I'm going with the Broncos, and I think that this is it. I think with the extended week, I think if he loses to this team at home, this is it for Adam Gase. Wow, so I'm going to pick. This is my hot take or it's not really a hot take, but this is my take of the week. The Broncos are going to win this game, and Adam Gase is going to be gone.
It's a bit of a hot take. It's not a scorcher, but it's a bit, it's warm.
Hey, this is your chance for your boy Greg Williams to come in and take that interim job.
Yeah, that's the move, right? You get Greg Williams. And first off, he is not my boy. Never say that. But the idea that this is the move, right? You get Greg Williams. You have him be defensive coordinator. You fire your head coach 2 weeks into the season. If you're up 2-0, doesn't matter. Get rid of him. Then you have Greg Williams be your head coach, and that's how you can get him to be your head coach. While you can pretend like you didn't. This game should be a mess and a lot of fun. All right, let's have you go ahead now. Who do you have?
All right, so those were my first two went off the board there. So right now I'm par for the course. I'm going to give you, I think, a sneaky, interesting game. I'm going to give you the Browns at the Cowboys for my number 3 pick. I think these are two teams that are still trying to figure out who they are, but I think have potential to be pretty good.
Okay, this is interesting. I had this one way lower. And again, last time this happened, I ended up getting it wrong. So maybe you know something here. I had this one. It was my 5th lowest game on my list. I think the Dallas Cowboys win this football game. I'm not. These are two teams that I kind of just naturally hate because I feel like they keep getting hyped up, and I don't think it's deserved. It's not their fault. It's not the fans' fault, but I just feel like the media, of course, they're going to hype up the Cowboys, and Cleveland has had it happen for a few years. But the reality is, what worries me about the Cowboys is their secondary. And I just don't trust Baker Mayfield to throw all over this Cowboys defense. And I think that if they can do what they did last week of just run the ball, just have success and just not have Baker not make any big mistakes. He made one, but it didn't result in interception, so that's fine. Have him do that. They can have some success. And it is fair to say this Dallas defense isn't great. But, I mean, the Dallas offense has been playing really well, and I just feel like I don't trust – again, it's one of those – I don't trust Baker Mayfield. I don't trust the Browns to really fully take advantage of this Cowboys defense. So I'm going to go Dallas here.
Yeah, I mean, I still think that's the right pick, but at the same time, I think that there is a case, the Browns I think Stefanski's starting to figure some things out with this offense where it's essentially 40 carries between Chubb and Kareem Hunt. And that's essentially what this team's going to be. They're going to win this game on the ground. And then, like I said, all offseason, then they pretty much go under their play action set where Baker's more solid than he is as just a pocket passer, where he's seemingly just throwing up ducks all day. He's able to essentially just pick apart with these weapons when he can. He's still not perfect. He's still never going to – I don't think he's ever going to be a great quarterback, but I think he's solid in this situation. Plus, they have 3 good weapons for him to go to when they need to, but this team's going to run the ball and control the clock. I think that also Cleveland's defense has been sneaky kind of good. Joe Burrow put up a ton of yards, but he also put up a ton of yards because he threw a ton of passes. It wasn't like he was breaking them apart. And I do think that this Browns team has the path that they can win this football game. I would still pick the Cowboys being at home. And I think that they need a bounce back win after the last week. But I do think that there's a path to where Cleveland wins this game.
Yeah, and this is kind of a big game too, where I think both these teams could really use this win. Especially, Dallas is now 1-2, and they were close to being 0-3. They could really use this win. I think they're going to be very hungry for it. Let's move on to another one where both teams could really use a win. This is the loser leaves town game of the week. Houston playing Minnesota. This is the one I'm going to give you. I feel like these are two teams that are 0-3. They desperately need a win. The loser is done, probably. Who do you have for this one?
Ooh, all right. So this one was slightly lower, but I still had it in my top 7 games. I'm going to go with the Texans on this one. And I think it's simply because I don't think either of these teams are good. And I think that they could end up both being the worst teams in their division after, I personally had hype on the Vikings in the half season. It clearly hasn't worked out so far. I know there's still people high on the Texans because they have the best quarterback in their division. So far, it's not working out. I'm picking the Texans because we talked about in the offseason how bad the cornerbacks are for Minnesota. And they might be down 3 of those bad cornerbacks. And I just think that's a recipe for disaster against Deshaun Watson. Not to mention Danielle Hunter's still not going to be back for this one. So I'm just going to go with the Texans. I feel like that Minnesota's defense is too banged up. And Watson, I think, is going to have a big day.
Yeah, I think that logic is very sound. I was actually a bit impressed with Minnesota. I thought they played Tennessee well. Again, that's when they sort of had to win. And I think in a vacuum, losing by 1 point to Tennessee, there's no shame in that. But again, both these teams, even though, listen, if you look at, Minnesota's definitely had more ugly losses than Houston has, but it does feel like this is really both teams need this win. And I think it's kind of just a great gift from the football gods if it's going to almost feel like a playoff game 4 weeks into the season.
Yeah. Yeah, I really do feel like that. I think it's going to be. I don't know. I don't see either of these teams recovering this season. Do you?
I wouldn't bet on it.
Okay, no, let me rephrase it. If you're going to pick a team to recover and make the playoffs between these two, which one would you pick?
Well, on one hand, we have seen Houston do this before. I think I would pick Minnesota if I have to pick one to recover and make a postseason. But it's tough because I do feel like I still like a lot of the pieces for Minnesota. Dalvin Cook had over 180 rushing yards last game. Like, they had some pieces. And again, if they can just, somehow figure out the cornerback position, they could be okay. But I think that's not going to happen. But I feel like Houston has more problems than Minnesota does, and I do still like Minnesota's coach better than Houston's. Not saying much.
Yeah, I mean, Bill O'Brien, Ben Noodleman here said it right. If they lose this, I think he's already on the hot seat, but if they lose this, he's in big trouble, I think. I think they give him the season, but it's still a weird situation with how much power he's gathered with the whole ownership situation. But who knows what could happen if this continues to blow up? I think he is gone by the end of the year, but at this point, I wouldn't be surprised if he sticks around because of everything going on with the Texans.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's move on now. How about you give me a game here?
All right, I think that I'm gonna go with. I have two games. I'll go with the good game. Here we go. I'll go with the Colts at the Bears. The undefeated Bears. Big Dick Nick is in. Yes. Who are you picking for this one?
Yes, the undefeated Bears. I think I saw a meme that said it perfectly, where it's like the Jack Sparrow meme of like, you're by far and away the worst 3-0 team I've ever seen. And then the Bears are like, but we are 3-0. I do feel like this is this is a game that I do feel could go either way. I think the Colts are the better team. And again, it's one of those things where it's irrational and this doesn't make any sense, but the Bears have a better record than I feel like they're worth. So they're going to lose an extra game. Like, I think that I just think there's something to that. I don't know why. I do think that Indianapolis is a good team. Yes, we have Nick Foles, and who knows? I mean, but I guess really what could be interesting is, this Colts defensive line has been very inconsistent so far this season. And it'll be interesting to see what they can do against a bad Chicago Bears offensive line. If they can get pressure consistently, I mean, we saw how when Nick Foles was in Jacksonville, it's very difficult for him to have success. He's not the best mobile guy. So I think that I am going to go Indianapolis here. No, the line's only 2.5. I think I would even take Indianapolis with the points. But I could see Chicago pulling this off. And again, they've been surprising me so far, so why not one more game?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I had the Colts labeled here. I think that they are the better team. I feel like the Colts is very straightforward with them. I feel like this is an easy one that if I feel like I've been saying it a lot. If Phil Rivers takes care of the ball for this team, they're going to win a lot of games because they have a really good defense, I think, and they have a good running game. And they have, I think solid weapons on offense just overall. I feel like if Philip Rivers just doesn't turn the ball over to the other team, that this team can win a lot of football games. But he has the propensity to throw the ball away a lot and, give the other team the ball, and especially with the Bears and that defense. But I'm still going to pick the Colts. I think they pull this one out. And I think you're kind of right with this. It's like, I think both of these teams make sense at 3-1 rather than the Bears at 4-0. So right. I think it does make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I agree. All right. Yeah, I don't have too much to add there. I think that's well, it'll be interesting to see what the Indianapolis Colts offense does against the Bears defense as well. Bears defense has played really well. But yeah, it could be a great matchup. Colts O-line versus Bears D-line. That should be a blast. But yeah. All right, I'll give you a game now. You know what? Again, I picked against the Raiders, or I had to pick the Raiders last week. I think I've had to pick the Raiders back-to-back weeks now, so I'm going to give them to you. Bills taking on the Raiders. I think these are two, teams contending for a playoff spot. Obviously, Buffalo coming off of that blown 28-3, but then still find a way to win game. And the Raiders coming off of, I think, a disappointing performance from their perspective against New England. Who do you have in this one?
Yeah, it wasn't the best performance from the Raiders. I think that I'm going to take the Bills. Just because even with Kwiatkowski back, I think that this Raiders run defense is not good. And between Singletary, Moss, and Allen, there's just a lot of guys who can run on this Bills backfield. So I'm going to take the Bills in that regard. And, we really like the weapons that the Raiders added this past offseason for wide receiver. Well, it seems like Edwards is going to be out and Ruggs might be out too again. And if they're losing those two guys, I think that they're going to have a tough time getting anything going.
Yeah, well, the one thing worth mentioning, though, is, Buffalo's defense did not play well in the second half against the Raiders.
They haven't played well all year.
Yeah, really. I mean, that's a fair point. And they've been an offensive-minded team through 3 games. It seems weird to think, as they were so defensive-minded last year, but it has been their offense. Their offense is the reason they're 3-0. And so, this could end up being a higher scoring game than people might realize. I think this could be this is the game that for Buffalo, I think they're going to be hopeful that they can really get something going. You could see Josh Jacobs have a big day in this one.
Yeah, I mean, I could see 5 or 6 people having a big day in this one. I think you look at, some of the weapons on the Bills, like I said, Allen, um, Jacobs, and I think Darren Waller could have a nice bounce back performance in this one. I also do think that if this game becomes a shootout, I still think that kind of favors the Bills. I think that they are able to score a lot of points more quickly. I think the Raiders offense is good, but I think it's kind of a rhythm-based offense. I don't think it's a team that's going to light people up for a 45-point game, but I think that they can consistently get 25, 26 points. But yeah, I mean, I just think that the Bills are capable of going off on anybody. And when I don't trust this Raiders defense, then I'm going to pick the Bills.
Yeah, no, it definitely makes sense. I also think two very underrated, good clutch quarterbacks. Good at the end of the day. These are two guys who I do feel like I trust with the game on the line, with the ball in their hands. So there could be a fun fourth quarter if this game is close.
Yeah, I mean, Carr played well last week. I liked a lot of what he did. Obviously, the fumbles were part of an issue, but when you're going against an elite pass rusher like Chase Winovich, that becomes a problem. But at the same time, he was definitely not on my list of why the Raiders lost that game. I thought he played well and had some good throws, especially that they had that drive at the end of the first half with they scored in 27 seconds. He was dropping some absolute dimes on that defense. So I thought he showed himself, but if he's missing his top two weapons, or it sounds like Waller is going to play, but if Ruggs and Edwards are out, I just think it's too tough to overcome.
Yes. Can we go back? So when you say you think Winovich is elite, A, is it a meme? Or B, is this, do you mean he's elite? And what is your definition of elite? For me, elite is you can argue they're the best in the league. Is this a joke and I'm just not getting it? What is Chase Winovich's elite thing? I'm very confused.
He's elite like Joe Flacco's elite, obviously. No, I mean, I think that his improvement this season has been kind of insane. I'm obviously over exaggerating as a Patriots fan to say he's elite, but he's statistically he's on pace with some of the top pass rushers in the league. I think that 98.5 The Sports Hub in Boston put this out the other day. If you look at the number of guys who have 10 combined tackles, 5 quarterback hurries, and a strip sack, it's him, Aaron Donald, and Chris Jones. So he's in pretty good company right there. Obviously, it's a very small sample size, but he's still not an every down player. He's a pass rushing kind of specialist. But I think the improvement I'm seeing from Chase Winovich this season, we're obviously going to talk about the Patriots, so we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. But he's looking awesome this year. The second year leap I've really appreciated from him.
Oh yeah, who said Chase Winovich should be drafted in the first round?
Who, you?
Your podcast co-host. That's right. So I'm with you. I'm a big fan of him. I just was confused about the elite thing. Any final thoughts on the Bills Raiders?
No, I think we covered just about everything. Yeah, I mean, I just think that overall the Bills, they're going to be good this year. I think both of these teams could make the playoffs. But I think that the Bills are just more set up to win this game.
Yeah, seems likely. And Bills do play a similar style to New England, and we saw how that went last week. All right, so now it's your turn to give me a game.
Let's see here. What was the next one on my list here? I got to look down.
Terrible job here. Poor preparation.
I know. I have it written here. I just have to read my paper and see it. All right, so here's an interesting game. Two teams that didn't have a lot of expectations this season. We're going to go with the Jacksonville Jaguars at the Cincinnati Bengals. Okay.
I was too busy putting up positive Joe Flacco things that people were posting in the chat. You said Bengals? Jaguars, Bengals?
Jaguars at Bengals.
Gotcha. Okay, that one was also the next. Again, easy way to get me distracted and get your comment on the video is by talking positive about Joe Flacco. Yes, Jaguars, Bengals. This was next on my list. Yeah, I think that this is an interesting one. The key takeaway I have with this game is that the Bengals offensive line is very, very, very bad, and the Jaguars do have some pass rushers. I do think that this isn't the game that I feel confident in either way. This is kind of another one of those games where, I thought these two teams would be, not very good this year. Jacksonville has surprised me. I think Jacksonville has more talent than Cincinnati does. And I also think that there's nowhere in Jacksonville's roster that is as big of a hole as the Bengals offensive line. And it's just hard to win with that. So yeah, I think I like Jacksonville here. I could see it being Cincinnati, but I think I'm going to go Jacksonville here.
Yeah, I would go with that too, especially I saw DJ Chark supposed to be back, which is going to be big because
Hmm.
I think that passing game really struggled without him there. And the Bengals run defense in the first 3 games of the season, just looking at this quick off the dome, it was 4.9 yards per carry against the Eagles, 6.1 yards per carry against the Browns, and then quickly going to pull up the Chargers. They had 4.0 yards per carry, and what was kind of a bad performance for them. This could be a huge James Robinson game in that regard. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think the Jaguars are good, but they're definitely not as bad as everyone thought. They have nice pieces on offense, specifically. Obviously, you look at Minshew, you look at Robinson, who, like I said, has been kind of a revelation this season, and he's an absolute stud. And
Hmm.
you look at Chark. When all those guys are healthy and going, I think this offense can be solid, and I think that's just better than what I could say for the Bengals.
Yes, James Robinson. I'm looking forward to him winning Offensive Rookie of the Year. Goes from undrafted to that. I feel like he's playing fantastic. I feel like he would never win just because of he's playing in Jacksonville. But yeah, very
I
fun
mean,
stuff.
who would beat him right now? Burrow?
I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire is probably the front runner.
You think so? Really? I don't see that. I mean, I get Edwards-Hilaire's getting the hype, but at the same time, or as Steve Levy says, Edwards-Elaire. But
Oh right, yes.
yeah, I think Robinson's been better this year. I mean, and it's not obviously, if Edwards-Elaire was in Jacksonville, he could get the same kind of touches probably. But I just feel like James Robinson, his situation's been really good.
I agree. I mean, I'm looking at the stats right now of Edwards-Helaire. He had that big game one. Hasn't done much since then. 3.8 yards per carry in week 2 and 3.2 yards per carry in week 3. But just the fact that he's had a big game in prime time, I think that. Well, I do agree Robinson is better. I think that if it's even in the ballpark, they're going to give it to the guy who plays for the Chiefs or a quarterback with Joe Burrow. But yeah.
So
Anyways,
you don't count Thursday night against Miami as a big game in prime time?
do you think that I think most people in the media didn't even watch that game? I'm going to bet there's a good amount of people that have votes that did not watch that game.
Well, it was during a big playoff game too, wasn't it, for NBA? I think the Lakers were on that night. Yeah, that's a sidebar,
Possible.
but yeah.
Yeah, possible. Yeah, I believe so. I don't know. There was no lightning game, but there might have been that. Probably was that then. All right, so I'll give you a game now. I'll give you your team because
All
I'm
right.
evil. I'm going to give you the Patriots Chiefs. Listen, Chiefs are minus 7-point favorites, but you can never count out Bill Belichick. What are you going to do? Are you going to betray your favorite team or are you going to go full homer and pick them? Either way, I got a spin zone to attack you with it.
Listen, I had a bad record last week for pick'ems, so I
Mm-hmm.
need to bounce back here. As much as it pains me to say, I am going to pick the Chiefs. I think the Chiefs at home are going to win this one. I think I do a full breakdown of how the Patriots can win this game at the Patriot Way podcast at GuyBostonSports.com. Anyone wants to check me out there, go for that. But anyway, I think that there is a roadmap to where the Patriots win this game, and it's similar to what Bill Belichick has deployed against the Chiefs. They're essentially going to put one guy on Kelsey at the line of scrimmage, a safety shadowing over the top. It's basically the same thing they did against Waller. And then what they're going to do is essentially do that, and then they're going to run the ball like 45 times in this game with their 18 running backs and Cam Newton. And they're basically just going to try and control the clock. So the problem is that even if you control the clock, Mahomes needs 5 possessions to score 35 points. So I do think that the Chiefs are going to win this one. I think the toughest part is going to be that against the Chiefs now, it just seems like Mahomes is in that territory because he was electric his first year, but now he's become so efficient with his just big plays that blitzing Patrick Mahomes is a waste of time, and I think the Ravens figured that out too late in the game Monday night. We didn't talk about that, but yeah, I feel like that they figured out too late Monday night that blitzing Patrick Mahomes is really just a waste of time. He's gonna figure it out before you even get to him. So I think that he's in that Brady Manning stratosphere from the mid 2000s, Brady and Manning, where you essentially just have to rush 4 and hope that they get to the guy before he throws the football. Now, where I think that hurts the Patriots, where I did say earlier in this podcast, I really like Winovich, but Dedrick Wise had his best game as a Patriot last week, and He was solid, but it wasn't anything spectacular outside of getting the defensive touchdown. So I just don't think that they can rush four guys against this Chiefs offensive line and get to Mahomes consistently enough to where he isn't picking this defense apart. Because I think he can pick any defense apart, even with our secondary, who struggled this year. So
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think you need a very specific team to have a chance against Mahomes, and I don't think that this is. You almost need to build your team to beat Mahomes, and the Patriots certainly haven't. They have a great. They're kind of the opposite. They have the great secondary, and their weak spot is the front seven. And I think that this is a situation where it seems like on offense, Kansas City should have their way to some degree, and I think again, we kind of just saw this game in a way because the Patriots and the Ravens are kind of similar teams in a lot of ways, and we saw how I thought that Lamar didn't have his best day against Kansas City throwing the ball. He missed some throws that typically he makes. But even with that, I think that we saw how they were able to get some key stops against Jackson. I think they'll be able to get some key stops against Newton as well. I think I would take the Patriots with points, but without points, I think this is the right pick.
yeah, I just think that the Chiefs are too good. I think that the one thing I've seen from the Chiefs though is that the Patriots are going to be able to attack this defense in some different ways. I think that they can be aggressive in getting some yards on the ground. One of the things I'd really like to see is them being a little more aggressive early. They once again came up pretty conservative on offense in the first quarter against the Raiders. That's 3 weeks in a row. I wouldn't mind them getting some of these receivers in rhythm early in game. I think that Harry still has a long way to go to justify his first round selection, but I think one of the things he's really improved on is that he really understands his size as a wide receiver. So he's going to, I wouldn't mind a couple 10-yard hitches to Harry just quickly out of the gate, get him into the game, run the ball a bunch, get Edelman in that patented play action cross over the middle, get these receivers going earlier in games so that we're not forced to play catch up, because if you're playing catch up against the Chiefs, you're not going to win.
Right. That is very fair to say. Do you trust these receivers to get open against Kansas City's secondary?
I mean, yeah. I mean, I think I can. I think Edelman is kind of the guy who can sneak over and get open. He's going to find some spots in the middle of the field to get open. I think that when it comes, like I said, I think Harry, his separation is never going to be awesome. But if he just goes out there and plays, it's almost like kind of a tight end role where if you're running slants and hitches, you're basically just boxing out the guy in the secondary. He essentially just has to play in that sort of regard where he's just taking these guys and putting them on his back, and they can't get around him without committing pass interference.
Yeah, I agree. So okay, let's okay. How about you go? Unless you have any final thoughts on this one, you can go ahead and give me a game now.
No, I think I covered just about everything I had with that one. I'll go with my next game. One team that I feel like, oh man, yeah, I'll go with this one. Why not? So I feel like this team has some issues, and the issues have definitely been talked about because they've been on prime time multiple times already this season. Let's go with the Saints at the Lions, who had a big win in week 3.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. It's kind of higher up on my list as well. I don't. Again, I feel like this is the kind of thing where this is a huge game, and the loser of this is almost the loser leaves town game as well. Going down to 1-3 is very difficult to come back from. Not impossible. I mean, it seems like every year there's one team that goes like 0-3 or like 1-3 or 2-4 and then makes the playoffs. But yeah, I mean, I think that the smart money on this one is the Saints. I think that they're the better team. I know that Drew Brees hasn't thrown the ball over 15 yards down the field, but you know what? Their offense hasn't been a problem. Their defense has had some issues here and there. At least in terms of last week against Green Bay, the offense wasn't the problem. Kamara was a monster. A lot of it was poor tackling, but guess what? The Lions have some guys who can miss tackles as well on defense. So I think Kamara will be able to be successful. They need Michael Thomas back. It looks like he might be back. So that could be a huge boost. I think this team is still very good. I'm not ready to hit the panic button. I think the Lions team, I think the Saints are more talented. I think they're better coached. The only position that I really think the Lions have a better standing in is quarterback, which is obviously a very big one, but I still am going to go New Orleans.
Yeah, I do think that this is a bounce back week for for the New Orleans defense. I think they have a pretty good game in this one. I liked a lot of what I saw out of the Lions offense last week, and I like that they're giving Adrian Peterson the ball more and more on offense because he's their best running back. They have those young guys, but he's the best one back there still at 35. It's fantastic to see. I think that they need to, if they win this game, it's establishing him on the ground, and Matt Stafford just has a big game after that. But I just don't think this team's going to be able to challenge the secondary enough to be able to get this win. I would pick the Saints too. I feel like they weirdly kind of need this. They need the bounce back performance to show people that they're still contenders in this area.
Yeah, it is very bizarre. They looked so good week one and then kind of have struggled. But you know what? I mean, this could be a get right game for them too, where the Lions are kind of a team that has a lot of talent, but at the same time, I feel like for the Saints way more than the Lions. The Saints need this one. This is going to be a tough one. They can't lose 3 straight. And I think kind of feel like when your back's against the wall, you do have a little bit of extra urgency. I think New Orleans comes out and gets the victory here.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. They can't fall two games behind Tampa Bay. So I do think they come out and win this one.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll give you a game now. This is another game with a team that desperately needs a win. Again, I feel like right around this time of football is so much fun when there's these teams like all of a sudden they need wins that we thought were going to be good. The one I'm going to give is the Philadelphia Eagles taking on the San Francisco 49ers. 49ers, they looked very good last week, I thought, against a not great Giants team, but at the same time, as banged up as they are, the fact that they were able to pull off such a big victory is good. And again, Eagles, they need a win here. 2-1. Who do you got here?
I do think that they were very fortunate to play the New York teams, who I'm pretty much going to fade all year gambling wise. Even if they're playing on that turf, they were fortunate to play them with those injuries. It seems like they are going to get Kittle back for this one. So I'm going to go with the Niners. I think that Kyle Shanahan's just really flexing on us right now that, he can pretty much have anybody on offense and have a top 15 offense in the league, which is just ridiculous that he's that good of a coach on the offensive side of the ball. So I'm going to go with the Niners. I just think that Kyle Shanahan's too good, and I'm just really concerned about this Eagles team figuring this out. They just have so many things that I think are wrong with this team that I don't know if it gets better this week against this team.
Yeah, I mean, no. Again, the main reason I'm giving you this one is, again, just because the Eagles need this victory so badly. They, interestingly played for a tie last week, so there's just so much craziness going on. But yeah, I mean, listen, with Kyle Shanahan, he's been doing this his whole career. This is the same guy who nearly went to the playoffs with Brian Hoyer at quarterback. The only quarterback he hasn't been able to have any success with the entire time was Johnny Manziel, which, listen, that's not too much blame on him.
Yeah.
So, I think that what he can do is so impressive. The system works very well, and Nick Mullins is still a very good quarterback. I think. I do think he's he's at least close to a top 32 quarterback in the NFL. One maybe bright spot for Philadelphia. Yes, your offensive line is banged up, but so is San Francisco's D line. No Nick Bosa, obviously. Maybe this could be a situation where, they'd probably get killed if this is the fully healthy Niners team, but maybe they have a chance here.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely true. I think that, Miles Sanders is capable of having a big game without these guys on the offensive line. Maybe Wentz stays on his feet a little bit because Bosa's not coming at him. They're able to establish something on offense and get going. But I just don't think that they're going to. I don't know if this Eagles team recovers this season. It's not a must-win territory because, sadly, I think 7-8-1 for them might win the division. So It's not a must-win territory, but at the same time, I don't know if it recovers. I just don't think that there's the pieces aren't working right now, and I don't know if they just need a reboot with, should Jalen Hurts come in? I mean, it's crazy to think about. I mean, I still really like Wentz and his talent, but maybe this team just needs to reboot and try something new.
Yeah, I mean, this does kind of have the makings of a game that I could easily see San Francisco just blowing out Philadelphia. But so let's do this then. Sometimes we do this on the games that seem like they're going to go one way. Paint this picture where the Eagles win this game?
I I think it really just comes down to when times to bounce back. I don't think, he's finally, because of the injuries, he's not facing the same pass rush that it looked like when the schedule was made. But the Eagles have really struggled against some pass rushes so far this season. I think that it really means Wentz stays on his feet and he's able to utilize those two tight ends effectively. He may hit a deep shot with Deshaun Jackson, catch the 49ers defense by surprise. And that's really what it comes down to this one. They got to score like 28 points simply by Wentz being able to have a bounce back and have a big game and play at the level he's capable at and making good decisions and not turning over the ball.
Yes. So, right. I think that's good stuff. So you picked them to win, not tie. So you don't get a wrong answer for this if it goes to, like last week when it was a tie.
I think the Niners to win.
That's what I said. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. Yes. And now we'll move on. You get to pick now. Who do you have?
All right. So we're getting down towards the end of our list here. I don't know why I have this team so high, especially against a good team, but I just feel like I'm looking at some of these underdogs here for these last games, and which team is most capable of pulling up an upset is basically what I'm looking at. And I guess you got to trust, if a team is elite on one side of the ball, even if they're just atrocious on the other side, you got to trust that, the point of that upset is that elite side comes out. So I'm going the Falcons at the Packers.
Okay. I was wondering where you're going with that. Yeah, I guess this makes sense. I mean, I had them a little bit lower, but I do get the logic there and Green Bay, their defense didn't look great last week. They could not tackle Kamara if their life depended on it. So now you got to go and play one of the best offenses in the NFL. Atlanta, they play, let's say some nice things about Atlanta. They play the first 3 quarters very well. They're great in the first 3 quarters. If football games were 45 minutes, they'd be Super Bowl champions. They would, be at least 2-1. They'd be great.
I think they'd be 3-0. So
yeah,
that's
right, yeah,
yeah.
I couldn't remember the other one, but
yeah, it's absolutely crazy that they can't figure this out.
I think they were down against Seattle. It was whatever. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's just absolutely crazy that this continues to happen to this team. I mean, I honestly think with losing 2 games like that back to back, I think I saw it was greater odds that the entire team was struck by lightning than they lose both of those games in that fashion. Yeah. So, I mean, I think that it's amazing Dan Quinn still has a job after that. I know it's harsh after 3 games, but at the same time, those are 2 monumentally bad, historically bad losses in 2 weeks. So, I mean, I don't know how it gets better because I said last week that it has to bounce back in their favor sooner or later. It doesn't. It clearly doesn't because it never happens. I would pick the Packers, obviously. I think that they win this one by 2 touchdowns. But I do think that Atlanta's offense is elite, at least for 45 minutes. Like you said, they look really good. So I think that if they put up 35 points in the first 3 quarters and they're maybe up 35-17 somehow, is that enough to hold them off? I mean, they've proven that that's not enough to hold teams off. But maybe one time they hold on to that win. So,
yeah. Here's my question. Aaron Rodgers trying to win MVP. Do you purposely go down like a couple of scores in the 4th quarter so that you can get a great comeback and have that on your mantle?
Oh man, I just imagine the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air where Will Smith plays Carlton 1-on-1 and Carlton starts up 20-0 and Will wins 21-20 every time. Yes. I just imagine Rodgers walking out to the refs, hey, we're down 30-0, put 15 minutes on the clock. This is for the game. And he just trots out there and does it. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, I could see him spotting a nice 20 points with the way Aaron Rodgers is and how petty he is, I could see him just saying, yeah, I'm not going to try the first 3 quarters and then I'm going to torch them the last one. But no, I just think that Green Bay is a way better team.
Yeah, I think so too. I don't think Aaron Rodgers is petty, but nevertheless, we'll go on. Okay, so now my pick. I'm going to give you... Well, see, I was low on this. I'm surprised the line... This one had a much lower line than I was expecting. I'm going to give you Cardinals Panthers. I think these were a couple of teams that I believe these were both misses. They might have been both misses by you last week. The Cardinals looked like they were going to win. They lost to the Lions. Panthers, they beat Somebody. So
Chargers.
Cardinals Panthers. Yes, that's right. Cardinals Panthers. Who do you have for this one?
Well, so the Panthers' game plan is essentially never turn over the ball
Hmm.
and do as little as possible on offense. So I'm basically just going to say that the Cardinals will win this one because I thought that last week that the Chargers were a better team. They had more yards. They looked better on offense. But Carolina didn't turn over the ball, and that's essentially what they're going to do every week. It works against the Chargers, who are a fringe good team. I don't think it works against an actual good team like the Cardinals. So I think the Cardinals win this one. I think Kyler Murray has a big game and big bounce back game because he made some really bad plays last week. I think he's going to come back in this one engaged. And I don't know who in that secondary is going to guard DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, there's not a lot of people in any secondaries who can guard him, but particularly in this Panthers defense, I don't see a lot of guys in that team that are going to be able to handle him.
Yeah, no. I think this is going to be a very high scoring game. I don't know the over under. I'm still betting the over because I think that this seems like it should be a high scoring game. I don't really trust either defense to stop either offense too much. I do feel like for Carolina, they've proven they can still run the ball well, and so I think that I still do trust that they can have some success. And the reality is they might not have a DeAndre Hopkins receiver, Carolina, but they do have enough really good, setup guys that can do their role and get guys open and sort of scheme guys open. And Rule's good at doing that. And so I do think the smart money is on Arizona. I think there's a chance that Carolina gets the upset here, but it seems like neither defense is greatly suited to stop either offense. But Arizona's offense is probably the better matchup compared to the Panthers' offense.
Yeah, and it's the same thing I kind of said with that Bills-Raiders game. If this game is a shootout, I just feel like the Cardinals offense has a much higher propensity to be explosive. I feel like the Panthers, similar to the Raiders at their best on offense, is kind of a rhythm-based offense that just, runs their game plan and does it at a very high efficient level. And I just think that, the Cardinals can score on you in a second if they need to because they just have some big-time players. So I think that if this game is a shootout, that definitely favors the Cardinals in my book. So yeah, I think it's an easy pick. I think the 3.5 is kind of low, actually. I think people might be overreacting to last week from both of these teams. So yeah, I'm picking the Cardinals.
I agree. I would take Cardinals even with points, but I think out of the 5 remaining, that was the one that I felt was best. So now there's 4 remaining. What are you going to give me?
Wow. Okay. So these are definitely our, outside of having the Jets a little higher this week because of the team they're playing, these are definitely the 4 teams that we've had towards the bottom week in and week out. I will go with what I think is the best team of these 4, potentially pulling off an upset. I don't think they will, but I'm going to go with the Chargers at the Buccaneers.
Yeah, I think this is a good one. This is probably the best. Was next highest on my list. I've got the Bucs, obviously. They're 7-point favorites right now. I just think that I do think there could be potentially maybe a bit of a trap game here with the Chargers defense. But at the same time, the last time Tom Brady, at least the last time I can remember, Tom Brady went up against an Anthony Lynn defense, it was not great for the Chargers. He completely tore them apart. As I'm sure you remember very closely. So I do think that, it'll be interesting to see what adjustments Anthony Lynn and the Chargers make on that side of the football. But I also just think, are the Chargers going to score 10 points in this game? I mean, their entire offense is run the ball, get these little, flip passes. They do have, obviously, with Herbert, it's opened things up to some degree. But can't you just see that I can totally see this Tampa Bay team just completely shutting down the Chargers off. And again, Tampa Bay, they're a defensive first team. They really are, despite the fact that everyone talks about Brady.
Yeah, I mean, the front 7 for the Buccaneers is just ridiculous. I mean, I think that the pathway for, we talked about for some of these underdogs, what's the path to them winning this game? I think Keenan Allen would have to have a big game because I think the way that you try and attack this Tampa Bay defense is attack some of their players at cornerback. And Keenan Allen is good enough to do it, but I just think that I think this is kind of a comeback to earth game for Justin Herbert. I think that the pass rush for the Buccaneers is too good. I think the front 7 for the Buccaneers is too good that they won't be able to establish the run game. And if it's in a situation where Herbert's having to drop back 42 times because they're down early and they can't run the ball, that's not a situation for him to succeed in his third start of his NFL career.
Yeah, I agree. I think the only real advantage I really feel like the Chargers have in terms of their offense against Tampa Bay's defense is I could see some, like Keenan Allen, Carlton Davis is a good man coverage corner, but I still would say advantage Allen, and they have some good receivers. But again, the idea of all Tampa Bay has to do is they get the pressure quickly, and this is going to be rough. So yeah, that's what I have. Any final thoughts on Chargers Bucks?
I am interested to see how this defense goes up against Brady, because I think that Brady is methodically working in this offense to getting better and better. I think you're starting to see some of the connection with these guys, especially his receiver options. You saw the best Gronkowski game of the year by a mile and a half. He finally looked like he belonged on an NFL field.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm curious how this continues to develop. I'm really curious. This is essentially his fourth preseason game. So I think that I'm really excited to see this team against a better defense in week 4, because obviously they struggled against the Saints in week 1. They're facing another good defense. How has it developed from week 1 to week 4?
Yeah, it's interesting. They've continued to improve. We'll see if they do continue to improve. All right, my turn. I will give you a game. So there's 3 games left. There's the Ravens taking on Washington. There's the Giants taking on the Rams, and there's the Seahawks taking on the Dolphins. So, I think that this is, so again, 2 of these games are 13-point lines. I'm going to give you but I'm actually going to give you one of those lines. I'm going to give you, I am going to give you Giants Rams. I feel like out of the teams that I trust to, again, if you talk about well, I'll just hand it over to you and let's have you talk about it for a second. Give your pick.
Rams 35-7.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the Giants defensive line, the Giants offensive line is still a problem. They don't have a running game without Saquon Barkley, and Daniel Jones is hitting that Baker Mayfield lane of he's really good at turning over the football. I think he's fumbled almost in every game that he's played, which is almost nuts that he's 20 games into the season or his career, and he can't fumble, or he can't not fumble the football once. So I just think that, I think it's too much to ask for without Saquon on this team for this offense to be, keep up with teams, because I don't think the defense is great. And I think the Rams are angry and come back with a bounce back win.
If you're the Giants, do you run the ball at all? I think no. I think you just pass it every play.
So just go.
They're so bad at running the ball. Andrew Thomas has actually been very good. The rest of the line has been abysmal. And, no big deal. You only have Aaron Donald coming to town, or I guess you're going to his town. But I just feel like, this is, I don't feel good about any of these final 3 going a certain way. I just feel like at the end of the day, you kind of look at like the worst, the best teams that you don't think are going to win. I kind of look at this as like, could I see Jared Goff throwing 3 interceptions in this game? Like, I don't think he will, but I could see it happening. He has had bad games. I do like this Giants secondary. That's kind of my favorite thing about this team. It's unlikely, but I think that's the way that the Giants win, right?
Yeah, they would essentially just have to go full air raid here, and Jones has one of his good games. But at the same time, I just don't think it's enough for that to happen. I have pretty much faded the Giants I've won a lot of money this year gambling. Not, little brag here. I've won a lot of money this year gambling so far, and I've essentially just faded the New York teams each week, plus did a long shot teaser. I haven't won any of my long shot teasers, but all of my bets straight up are fading the Giants and the Jets. I'm staying away from the Jets because the Broncos are too hurt this week, but I'm definitely betting against the Giants. I don't care how big this line is. I'm willing to bet the Rams. If this was minus 19, I'd consider betting the Rams still. So I think that this is a situation where the Giants have too many injuries. Losing Saquon sucks. It really stinks for this team because he's the most explosive player they have. With their ability to commit turnovers, or Jones's ability to commit turnovers, and they have no running game and no offensive line besides Andrew Thomas. Like you said, he's been the bright spot, but one guy holding up 4 bad offensive linemen is never going to work. I just don't see any situation where they win this game.
Yeah. Okay. How about this then? What about I'll make a bet for this. Let's add an extra miss into this. How about this? 14.5 points. I have the Giants plus 14.5. Loser gets an additional miss added on. How does that sound?
That sounds great. Yes, I'll take it.
Okay, sounds good. We got a deal. All right. Now you can give me the final game between the two.
All right. I'm going to give you this game because I actually want to talk about this team. So I'm going to give you the Ravens at the Balls.
Okay. Ravens taking on the Washington Balls. Also, one of my favorite things about this is how we're getting new listeners every week, and more people are just confused about why are we calling them the Balls, and I just don't like explaining it, and we'll just move on. I think that yeah, I mean, obviously, I mean, there's no question you're going to pick Baltimore in this one. I think that I was a little bit regretting my pick a little bit. I thought maybe I should have gone with Seattle, Miami. So I'm glad you decided not to go that way, so I can still give it to you. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. When you talk about ways that the opposing team wins, it's really hard to paint the scenario where Washington wins this football game, right? I mean, the idea of this Washington offense now all of a sudden going to have any success against this Baltimore Ravens defense. I don't see how you do it. I don't see is Terry McLaurin going to be able to beat Marlon Humphrey consistently? I don't think so. And even if he does, you can just double him because you have the secondary talent to get away with it. And on the flip side, again, I do like the Redskins or the Balls defensive line. I definitely don't think that this is a defense that can really stop Jackson. They might be able to slow him down a little, but I think that, again, I think a 35-10 Ravens Vic. Actually, I think 35-10, that might not be enough. I think this Ravens teams might put up 40 points this game.
Yeah, and Chase Young's out in this game too. It sounds like he's going to be out again. So I think that that's even worse for Washington. Like I said, they have a small margin of error. The way that Washington wins this game is if Patrick Mahomes is traded to Washington tomorrow and suits up Sunday. And even then, that might not be enough because they're not good enough everywhere else.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I do want to talk about this Ravens game, though. So I was very disappointed with them Monday night, and I want to talk about this. Okay. I was very upset with how they played, and I was very upset with the performance because we both obviously picked the Ravens to win the Super Bowl. Nothing has changed, it seemed like, from last season when we said, or when I said, you didn't necessarily agree with me, but when I said from last year during the playoffs, this Ravens team is very good when they can stick to their game plan and run their game, but they're not good when they go down quickly because they can't come back in their game plan. It's not built for them to build comebacks. And once again, you saw it where somebody was commenting on it earlier. I was waiting to talk about the Ravens to bring this up. They scored a field goal on their first drive. Chiefs come down and score a touchdown. And then essentially the running game's just gone. They just stopped running the football as much as they were that first drive. And I did not understand. They were still getting good yards on the ground. Why are you – if you felt like being down 7-3 in the first quarter was enough to abandon the run game in that game plan, then why did you kick the field goal? Why didn't you go for it on fourth down and try and get the touchdown? If you feel like the Chiefs are so dangerous that you then all of a sudden have to open up your offense and do all this crazy stuff, why did you even kick the field goal in that regard then on the first possession of the game and not just go for it on fourth down? And I thought the Chiefs had the perfect game plan. I think that the defensive line did a really good job, I thought, of kind of treating Lamar in almost a running back kind of stance where they weren't chasing him in the backfield and chasing him after to get a big sack. They were basically getting past the offensive line, getting a yard or two upfield, and then chasing him horizontally. They were forcing him outside, forcing him to make uncomfortable throws that he didn't like. And the Ravens just saw this and never adjusted. They got some garbage time touchdowns at the end of that, but I just felt like the Chiefs had every opportunity that they wanted to. They could have scored whenever they wanted, and they couldn't figure out to stop blitzing Mahomes because Mahomes was going to torch them every time they blitz. So I didn't like this performance at all from the Ravens. For a guy who picked them to win the Super Bowl, I hated it a lot. I was very disappointed. I know it's early. It was week 3, but I want to hear your thoughts on this as I finish my rant.
Yeah, well, I'm not as freaking out about it as you are. I actually just watched this game for the first time on my Twitch stream right before I came on here because I was watching the Lightning win the Stanley Cup that day. But I thought that there were several things that were major standouts. For one thing, this Baltimore Ravens defense I don't think it's built to stop the Chiefs offense. I think that the Chiefs off, and I think we both, if I remember correctly, both were when we picked Baltimore. It wasn't that we think that Baltimore can beat Kansas City, 4 out of 7 times. It's that we think that Baltimore can beat most of the league better. They have an easier schedule, would get the bye week, and then would have an advantage in the playoffs. I don't think that this was an abysmal game. I definitely don't think that Baltimore scored in garbage time. I mean, they got it within one score with what 10 minutes left, 7 minutes left. There was a decent amount of time left. There were a couple of big mistakes by Baltimore. I think Baltimore shot themselves in the foot. Kansas City did not. That was kind of the biggest difference. There was a miscommunication, or where two Baltimore players tried to switch, or one did, one didn't, which resulted in a player getting wide open for a touchdown right before the half ended. That was a key touchdown. I do think that you look at Mahomes, he was 31 for 42 with 385 yards, 4 touchdowns. And then you look at Lamar Jackson, he had under 100 passing yards on 28 attempts. That's not good enough. So there is some differences, but I thought Lamar just missed throws. Like, I think Lamar just had a bad day. Like, I don't think I think the good news is I think the Chiefs just kind of had a bad day, as opposed to the Ravens more so had a bad day. But I also think it's fair to say that I think that Kansas City has now squarely moved in front, and they are now favorites. But I haven't given up hope on Baltimore.
Yeah, I mean, I think I wouldn't give up hope yet either. But at the same time, I don't necessarily see how these teams play each other later in the season, and this gets better for Baltimore. They still have the bad matchups in the secondary because they can't match up with a lot of that speed of the Chiefs. And I don't know. I think that the Chiefs defense is eventually going to get better and better throughout the year. I think that the pass rush had, in their 3 games, the pass rush looks really good against Houston and against Baltimore. And I thought that they looked really good this past week. And I think that this team continues to get better as they work in some of these younger guys on their defense. So I just don't see a situation later in the year where the Ravens bounce back and win this game based on the game plans I saw last Monday.
Yeah, I also have another couple interesting stats. So Lamar Jackson averaged 9.2 yards per rush. Gus Edwards averaged 9.8 yards per rush. Combined, they had 13 rushes. Lamar threw the ball 28 times. So, yeah, they just got away from their game too quickly. And Harbaugh has done this in the past. It's something he needs to do a better job of. I also see someone said, we need we need Earl back, Deshaun Elliott, not it, coming from Ravens fan. I feel like, Elliott, he hasn't been bad, but he did have that clear miscue on, he was the guy who screwed up on the miscommunication that resulted in that touchdown. And that was a huge play in that game, I think, where, it was 3rd down and long, and they, if Kansas City is off the field and they have to punt the ball back, maybe Baltimore scores, and maybe it's a completely different ball game in that moment.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely the biggest scenario, but I just don't see it. I think that this team's too bad. So are they playing essentially their 3rd best running back most of their game, the Ravens? Because I think Dobbins needs more touches too. The guy's explosive, especially in the passing game. So does that mean that they need to move Mark Ingram out of the starting lineup, basically?
Even Mark Ingram, they just need to run the ball more. Like, I'm looking at Mark Ingram had, 30 yards on 7 carries. Like, that's not bad. Like, they just need to run the ball more. I think is the real, they don't have a bad running back. They have 3 good running backs. That's not a bad situation to have.
Yeah. I mean, I just think that they need to work out. I thought it was crazy that they just stopped running the ball after the first drive. And if you really felt like that if you felt like going down 7-3 to the Chiefs was a problem, then there's no reason to kick the field goal on 4th down. Just go for it right away then. If you really feel like that's the problem where you need to then throw the ball all the time, then go for it on 4th down. They couldn't stop you on the ground. Lamar had 2 big runs on that first drive. And like you said, him and Edwards at the end of it combined for 13 carries. I just thought that was crazy.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I think they should have gone for it there. I said on my stream, you got to go for it in that situation. 4th and 3, you're playing Kansas City, and usually they do. So that's kind of uncharacteristic. It was a disappointing game for Baltimore, but I don't want to overreact just yet. We'll see what they can do. But yeah, also one more thing. The idea that they're not going to try to pass on Kansas City when clearly the weak spot of Kansas City is their linebacking core, where you think that this would be a great benefit to Baltimore. No. Weird decisions made by them for sure. But I do think that, again, long-term wise, I'm not as concerned as I am, in that game. But the blueprint is kind of there. But again, it's going to be really tough for them to beat Kansas City.
Yeah, I agree. And to wrap up this Ravens Balls game, The Ravens are going to win by 3 touchdowns after everything we just said bad about them.
Oh yeah, no, they're gonna. This is gonna be a blowout. Yeah, this is not gonna be close.
Yeah, they're going to win by a lot. But yeah, just weird decisions I thought from Harbaugh on that one, who I still think is a good coach. I just thought it was really weird that they decided that. So let's go ahead and go on to the next game. Do the Dolphins have a chance?
I mean, yeah, they have a chance. I mean, anything can happen any given Sunday. I think that this is again, how did they win? Well, listen, the Seahawks, they have a bad secondary, and Jamal Adams is looking to be out, which is crazy that this secondary, we thought it was going to be so good in the preseason. It has looked bad. So if Fitzpatrick can, go Fitzmagic and have some success throwing the ball, he's going to have to try to outduel Russell Wilson, which seems difficult. But listen, this is the guy who has outdueled prime Drew Brees. Like, this is someone who has in the past pulled some rabbits out of his hat. Or a rabbit out of your head, as Jason Witten once said. I think that I think there's a chance. It's not a big chance. I mean, and I think Russell Wilson's going to throw 100 touchdowns in this game. But yeah, I think that's the scenario where Miami wins.
Yeah, I mean, it's essentially Devontae Parker has to have a big game. This secondary thing, you're right. It's just been so weird how they can't seem to figure this out. I mean, if there's any game I think where they turn this around, it's got to be this one early in the season, right? I think that this is where I could see them start to get this going, and really get the secondary into shape for the second half of the season. But yeah, I mean, I'm betting the Seahawks, especially if I'm getting a full touch or less than a touchdown. Russell Wilson's just way too good.
Yeah, and I do also think the Seahawks pass rush is another thing that's a problem. So their defense it needs to work on stuff. It needs to improve. But again, Miami's defense is worse, and their quarterback is about equal. I would say Russell Wilson, Fitzpatrick. Like, it's a flip the coin.
Yeah, it's neck and neck. I want to play one game with you here. So,
okay.
who is going to pay Ryan Fitzpatrick a 1-year contract next year?
Ooh, this is a good one. Well, I feel like on one hand, typically the way it goes is that Fitzpatrick then becomes a backup after getting the starter for a year, and then earns the starting job. So that's the way I'm going to look at it. Where can he go to become a backup but earn a starting job? How about the New York Giants? How about they bring him on to be a backup, but then he ends up earning the starting job at a certain point, looks great for 4 games, becomes a starter for another year, and then doesn't do well?
I had them in Washington as my top 2 picks.
Yeah,
I mean, my goal in life is just that Ryan Fitzpatrick plays for 32 teams and somehow gets a start for all 32 teams. But yeah, I mean, I think them and Washington, someone's going to give him a 1-year contract next year, and it's just going to be so funny to see.
Well, like, it makes sense to put him in as a backup. Like, he's a good backup, but the problem is that there's a curse, and if you put him in as backup, he's 100% going to play that year. That's just what always happens.
Yeah, I mean, Ben Noodleman is right. Haskins isn't the answer for the balls. I think that, maybe when Alex Smith is ready to go, I think he's been inactive so far this season. Maybe when he's ready to go, he gets that shot at quarterback. He gets another chance to prove it, that he's back from that leg injury. But I'm also not convinced Daniel Jones is the guy anymore. He cannot take care of the football. I think he'll get his chance through his rookie contract, especially because they still have a bad offensive line in front of them. But I don't like quarterbacks. It's easy to say, but, it's the same argument with Jameis, even when he was throwing for 5,000 yards. I don't like quarterbacks who turn over the football. It's as simple as that. If I have a quarterback who can throw for half the amount of yards but not turn it over, I'm taking that quarterback. So, yeah, I mean, I have an issue with Jones, and I want to see it get better.
Yeah, and that's the thing about Fitzpatrick is he doesn't turn over the football. So that's why that would be a good move. Yeah. All right. Well, any final thoughts on the Seahawks Dolphins?
Bet the Seahawks. Yeah.
Okay. Yes. All right. Yeah. Should be a fun game. Should be a fun week. I think there's a few games that I feel confident are going to go one way, but a lot of games I really don't feel like are up in the air. So yeah. Before we sign off, have you watched any of the baseball? I was interested to see about your take on everything, all the chaos as a neutral fan.
Uh, I really like this Reds team. I think it's going to be a really interesting postseason performer. I know they lost game one in that extra innings game, but I think that could be a really dangerous team this postseason, especially with that pitching staff. But I actually think it's going to be interesting because with this extra round of playoffs, I feel like offense is going to be more important in postseason than ever. I feel like that scoring runs at a high rate is just going to become more important because these pitchers are going to pour more starts on their arms in a condensed format because they're playing a lot of these games back to back to back. So with all of these games, I'm looking for teams with a lot of offense. And I hate to say it, but the Yankees are going to win the World Series because of this. But yeah, I mean, I think that it's going to be interesting to see. But I mean, I just feel like that makes a lot of sense. What are your thoughts?
I kind of felt the opposite. I feel like this is like where pitching can really, I mean, especially with the two games, having a couple pitchers who can play. I see the Yankees right now. They won the first game 12-3. They're now leading 8-6. So I guess the offense working out there. There's been a lot of close games. Also, I mean, this has to be the Marlins have to win it, right? This is playoff Marlins. They squeak into the playoffs and then win. And they've beaten the Cubs already, game one. This is what the Marlins do.
Yeah, I mean they look good in that first one, winning 5-1. I think it's going to be interesting. I filled out my playoff bracket. I think I actually ended up I had the A's sneaking into the World Series in the AL, and I had the Dodgers. Just that Dodgers team is so loaded. I mean, are they the Atlanta Falcons of the MLB? Except they actually have a good franchise. I feel like that it's almost a curse once they hit the postseason, but this team can anybody beat this roster? It's just so much more talented, I think, than everybody else in the league.
Well, they remind me a bit of the Tampa Bay Lightning, right? It's like this completely talented team every year and just, lose in completely dreadful ways. Maybe final question. Can Florida pull off the Grand Slam? Can Florida teams end up winning a championship for each of the four sports? That would be the Heat, who are in the finals. You have, either the Marlins or the Rays in the MLB playoffs. Obviously, the Lightning already won it. And then it'd probably be Tampa Bay for the Super Bowl. Do they have a chance?
They have a chance. Mm-hmm. So wait, you're not saying the Jaguars or the Dolphins have a shot at the Super Bowl?
Well, I mean, we'll see we'll see how James Robinson does. Yeah, I think
mm-hmm. I think that there's definitely a chance. I like the Rays. I think the Buccaneers do have a chance, obviously, to win in the NFC and make the Super Bowl. Obviously, beating the Chiefs or the Ravens would be tough, but I think that they're capable of doing it. The Heat, I actually really like the Heat too. I think that did they lose game one? I actually haven't been following it.
I haven't checked either. I'll check that right now.
Yeah, great podcast content here.
Yeah, I could.
Oh, they're getting crushed.
Yeah, they're losing by 20 in the fourth quarter. So maybe not the best start.
Oh, where you got it right here. Dragic and Adebayo are hurt. So, I mean, if Bam's out, then this is over because Anthony Davis is just going to torch them. But I think that the Heat have a chance if all their guys ended up being healthy. But if they're not healthy, I don't think they have a chance at all.
Yeah. Let's go back to baseball for a second. I feel good about the race. I think we have the one thing I don't love is I don't love how no days off in between games. I think that hurts us because I think that we have the 1-2-3 punch of Charlie Morton, Glass now, and Blake Snell, or as ESPN calls him, Ian Snell. I think that the fact that there's no days off and we're basically only going to get 5 starts as opposed to 6 starts in a 7-game series out of those guys, I think it hurts a little, but I don't know.
That's exactly why I'm favoring offense this series, because there's more games with the extra round of postseason, and there's more starts essentially with the extra postseason games, and there's also no days off. So I think that definitely caters the offense rather than the pitching staff. But I mean, the thing is that the Rays always find ways to score runs. They manufacture runs in different ways better than any franchise in baseball has done for the past, any number of years. If you look back to even Joe Madden days, this is something they've done really well. I really like their offense. I like 3 teams out of the AL. I like the Yankees, the Rays, and the A's, and I like the Dodgers and the Padres in the NL.
Yeah, and we played the Yankees well, so I'm hopeful. Maybe Tidal Bay could be happening, but either way. Geez. I mean, hey, I'm new to this, all right? I don't know how to be cocky. This is how you sound every championship. No. Yeah. at the end of the day, like the Lightning won, I couldn't care less, to be honest. I hope we win, but like I'm happy either way.
Yeah, I mean that was a big one. It's definitely an exciting time to be living in Tampa right now. But Boston's coming back, baby. We're coming back strong next year. The Red Sox got Tanner Houck and Chris Sale coming back. It's going to be an elite pitching staff. The Patriots, we got all these pieces going into Kansas City this week. Watch out for that upset. And then you got, man, I can't even talk myself into this. The Bruins are old. We'll see.
Yes. But, all right. Well, here, I think we can end with that. Everyone, thanks for watching. Who's watched along, appreciate it. We'll be back on Sunday at midnight. Oh, before we go, Kyle, if you want to plug your where you're at.
Oh, yeah. So make sure to check out my stuff at GuyBostonSports.com. I'm writing there seldomly and also have the Patriot Way podcast. I had one come out this Wednesday morning. They usually come out Tuesday night or Wednesday morning there. And, breaking down all things Patriots. We're breaking down the previous game. So if any Raiders fans, it's more of a Patriot perspective, but you can hear a little bit about what I thought from your team there at GuyBostonSports.com, the Patriot Way podcast, and then previewing the Chiefs. So if you're a Patriots fan, make sure to listen. If you're a Chiefs fan, you can also listen and talk, laugh at me as I try to justify the Patriots winning this game. And also, not my content, but if you are a fan of the Giants, the Jets, the who else needs a quarterback? The Washington Balls. If you're a fan of I can go through all the teams that need a quarterback, but I'm blanking right now. This Saturday, 3:30, if you're not doing anything, go to your TV and watch North Dakota State football because Trey Lance is going to play his only college football game of the season this year. This is going to be the only chance you have to see Trey Lance. They have one game on their fall schedule against Central Arkansas. He's not going to they have scheduled in the spring, but he's probably not going to do that if he goes to the draft. So if you're a fan of a team who needs a quarterback, 3:30, watch North Dakota State play Central Arkansas to get your chance to see Trey Lance this season. And, if you get the third quarterback pick, third team that needs a quarterback in the draft order, Lance is your guy. So make sure to check him out. I'm looking at you too, Panthers fans. Make sure to go see him. He's a fun guy to watch. He hasn't committed a turnover his entire college career. But yeah, so make sure to go watch Trey Lance.
All right, yeah. Didn't expect you to plug a college football game when I said you can plug, but yeah, good stuff there. And everyone, thanks for watching. You can always find me on my Twitch or here on Jack's Kruger Sports on YouTube. And until next time, have a good one.